Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wolf Game Theory. This is Layer Cake, always joined by
Neil Bottle.
And today we're going to have Terminatus with us, and we're going to jump into the lore of the Wolf Game. First, I just wanted to run down the stat sheet a little bit and let everybody know kind of the state of the union in the Wolf Game. First, we will look at the leaderboard. Number 1, still unchanged. Number 2, still unchanged. Actually, I'm sorry. I take that back.
Wow.
G-Money has jumped into the second place spot. And Panther, who had just been susceptible to a hit, it was an attack by Crypto Coach Corey. So, wow, that's a little something, huh?
Isn't
right
it?
there, right off the bat. Kind of ruined that kumbaya moment they were having the other day in the spaces, huh? But yeah, you knew there was going to be some sort of retort after that GIF for sure. But then we have Panther, again, real Crypto Coach Corey's other team, Wongsworth, Aju, and Wolf Shizo 26, or sorry, Woolish 1026.
They were ready for a move right now as well.
That was pretty dramatic right there. Wow, yeah, they're ready. They're cute. Wow. So we'll see what happens there, and we'll have an on-air move, hopefully. So if we do break into the story here, it's only for breaking news in the Wolf Game. Going on, after that, we have Malco.eth, who did a fortification. Another attack by the Sham dude to Panther again. So he's just getting pummeled today. The Panther. That would explain his supplanting from second place. Then we have our first attack on House G-Money, which that was what I woke up to this morning. I was like, oh, there goes the honeymoon phase is over. You know, we'll see what leadership has to do in retort to that. Wow, and then we have another attack on Panther just before that by Crypto Coach Corey. So Panther's really taking the brunt of the hits right now. You know, my hypothesis the other day was that, you know, they're kind of portraying themselves as that sort of Wall Street sort of vibe a little bit. So you could see how the community would have that natural sentiment to attack. But yeah, those are my thoughts as of right now. We got, again, a move set up from Woolish 1026, which we might break in on air. Then right after that, we're going to have Aju, and then it kind of chills out from there. So do you have any thoughts on the game before we jump into this here deep dive?
Yeah, it's that's an exciting kind of move up the top. I wasn't expecting that at all. I didn't think the 3% Nox would have that ability so early in the game. But I guess he's getting pummeled, so...
Wow. I mean, did you feel like he was going to take this sort of bludgeoning? I mean, it seems like Crypto Corey's really kind of tugging on the heartstrings of the community right now, and maybe kind of, you know, that hero narrative we were talking about yesterday might be sort of seeping in, and people might be realizing that he may be truly what he says, man of the people here. So, wow. Well, let's switch gears a little bit here, and we'll jump into the sort of Wolf Game lore. And who else to bring us that but Mr. Terminatus, who I would say is the scribe of the community for sure. He's been since day one kind of keeping tabs on the evolution of the game and what's been going on, and through the amazing gifts and things that he has brought the community, which I would love for him to go into in this sort of talk that he's going to give. But without further ado, we're going to bring on Terminatus to kind of give us a rundown of the Wolf Game from his eyes.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. It's going to be really fun to kind of recount the game as it's evolved. You know, it feels like it's been a year, but this game has only been out for maybe 2 months or coming up to 3 months. But you know how everybody says in NFT land, a month feels like a year, and so it's kind of been going on, feels like forever.
For sure.
And yeah, I guess I did kind of find myself in this like historian or scribe kind of role at some point. I don't really know how it happened, but I found myself just very involved. I couldn't get myself away from what was the events of the game and wanting to help people learn more. And we would always get new people coming in, wanting more information, wanting what the best strategy is, and it's been difficult it was difficult to regurgitate the same answers over and over again. So eventually finally decided to make a guide, and maintaining that has become almost a full-time job. But yeah, I mean, let's dive into, I guess, the beginnings of the game. So I think Wolf Game kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people. It was a stealth launch in the very beginning. So there was not much hype or ado about its starting. But a lot of people, including myself, found out about it due to some tweets from Beanie. He's a very controversial figure, but he's a very popular figure. And so a lot of people, oh yeah. I mean, and for me, I'm actually relatively new to the NFT space. I started NFTs and getting involved in like July of 2021. So I'm not an OG. I'm relatively new, but I did take to Twitter, and following Beanie was one of the first things that I did. So got into Bloot and all that. But anyway, yeah, I saw him tweeting about Wolf Game, and it was basically just he was showing what the white paper was and how different this project was. His big thing of late was NFTs that had utility, and this project had really special utility. It's the whole NFT risk protocol is kind of what they've called it, and just reading the white paper, you knew that it was something different, something special, even if you didn't fully understand it, because there's a lot of complexities, even in phase one. Most projects had a kind of samey roadmap in 2021 at some point. Like, it was basically just everybody would release a project, and they would have their initial kind of PFP profile picture NFTs, and then in the roadmap they would have token release, breeding potentially, and that was basically that was it. Like, it was very, very samey, and this one is clearly different.
It was a big cookie cutter, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this one is different, and it was complex, like I said. So the white paper described, this is the very beginnings of the game. They only had sheeps and wolves, and it was really just that relationship. And it described the taxing and the stealing, which was what really got people talking about it. Like,
that was me.
What?
For sure, that was me.
Yeah.
The fact, exactly. when I heard someone say that, an NFT is able to steal another NFT, I was like, that's cool. That I want a piece of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, to lose your mint fee, basically, like the fact that so just to run down about how the stealing worked, is or the beginnings, like there was a mint at first for the Gen 0, the first generation of the tokens. Those were not stealable. Those were just minted with 0.069420 Ethereum. I think the Shepherd has a bit of a twisted sense of humor with that. We've seen that number pop up a bit.
For sure.
For whatever. Sure. Definitely. So yeah, we minted out, and it actually minted very quickly. It probably was maybe an hour or two of minting, which was relatively fast. There was 10,000 of the Generation 0 tokens, and even in minting those first tokens, you had a 10% chance of minting a wolf, and that's I think already pretty immediately people really wanted to start minting a bunch, because they saw in the white paper that the wolves would have special utility. They would be the stealers of the future NFTs, and they'd be the taxers. So like, people really wanted to take the gamble, and so we saw the mint go very, very quickly. Personally, I minted a few at the time. I didn't get any wolves, sadly, but I got in. I was happy to get in.
Yeah, I know I minted a few sheep myself, but I didn't get a wolf. I was eyeing them up on a secondary, but I actually picked up some sheep under mint price at the time, because people were selling them to risk getting that wolf, you know.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, that's something to note, is that the game did not immediately do amazingly. So after the mint, we basically, for a day or so, people weren't able to mint the generation 1 just yet, because the mechanics were that you needed to stake your sheeps. Actually, I take it back. There was definitely minting on day 1, because if people had a lot of sheep, they could stake them into the barn, and they would generate the wool at a 10K wool per day rate.
That was unreal. That's unreal at the time. That was crazy.
It was, well, so at first there was no liquidity pool for wool, so it was there was no like, oh, I'm making a lot of money.
Right. It was
not
funny money,
necessarily just yet. Yeah, it was just you're playing with monopoly money at the time. Like, it had no real value just yet, but you could start minting the generation 1 animals with 20K wool. So it just took a bit of time if you had a bunch of sheep, but if you only had a couple, then you had to wait a day or so. And so the generation 1 minting started off, no issues at the time. And there's the similar rule in place where 10% of the mints would turn into wolves, and 10% of those also could be stolen by wolves, owners of the wolves that had their wolves staked. So just how that worked is, when you went to do the mint, like in the smart contract, it would roll up a random chance that you're going to get stolen, and then it would pick a random wolf among the entire set of staked wolves, where the alpha score actually made a difference here. Wolves have an alpha score, 5 to 8, and the higher the score, the more weighting you had in this sort of randomized chance pool. So you had a higher chance of getting a stolen generation 1 animal at the time. So yeah, the minting for generation 1 went on for a bit, and the prices started to actually dip at this time, and that's when I think that's when we got to the all-time low of sheep, which was actually 0.03 Ethereum.
Yeah.
And so that's where everybody's now kicking themselves for not getting in big at that time, if they're around. I mean, think about how much growth you would have with your sheep if you bought 10 sheep at 0.03. It's
right.
Just wild.
That's like, that's big time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's when things kind of looked like, oh, we weren't really sure what was going to happen with the game. It was fun, but I think people were taking profits, and I don't know, people were starting to maybe lose faith a bit. Clearly, because they're selling below the mint.
Right. So at that point, you felt like it was less about the sort of DeFi and more about the flipping at that point, at least within the community.
Probably, yeah. And at the time, like, we didn't have the liquidity pool for wool, which meant you can't buy or sell wool. And so we had a lot of people coming into the server, like, asking, like, what's the point? Why are you doing this? Like, what is, like, and a lot of questions about what's going to happen after all the wool is generated from staking. Because
and so
the white paper mentioned that, like, there's a limit.
Stop there for just a second. What was the sentiment like in the community then? Like, as far as, like, the people who are sort of in there, invested in the project, like yourself, who are there to answer those questions for the people that join the project or were, speculating on joining or asking why or losing faith. What was the sentiment for, like, say, the OGs and the people that are currently still in the project?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was so early on that, like, nobody was really OG status. Everybody was basically the same, if you were in, you were early, but there was no real expectations that the project was going to do amazingly, but there was still a lot of people that, saw the price and were like, you're crazy not to buy these sheep right now. Like, 0.03 and there was a lot of faith that, you know, as the game continued on, that the prices were going to go back up. I mean, you see that a lot on many different NFT projects. You know, as things are dipping, you know, there's a core group of members that are like, how could this be happening? Like this makes no sense. Like, and yet more and more people will sell. But it was very short lived. And there was a member of the community at the time. His name was QuantSpike, and he decided that he was going to take the initiative to create a liquidity pool for wool and ETH. So it was kind of funny because at the time there was a lot of people who said, "Don't do it." I was actually among them. I was like, "This is too early. It feels like if you were to introduce a way to artificially buy more wool, then, you know, the finely balanced ecosystem that Shepard was setting up would kind of get thrown off, and, you know, we would just have whales coming in and buying a ton of wool and minting, and it felt like that it was too early to kind of have such a major disruption in the economy."
At this point, was there an understood capped supply of wool, or at this point it was kind of exponential and nobody really knew?
There was a cap in the original white paper. It did talk about the cap, the max supply, and it talked about, it said 5 billion, and it said 600 million was going to be set aside for the Shepherd. It said that the initial staking faucet would turn off at, I think it was 2.4 billion, somewhere around there. And then the leftover 2 billion was what they called community rewards, which didn't have a clear use, but it was kind of understood that there would be something more after this that wasn't discussed in the white paper, but, you know, you could tell that there's going to be more, despite the fact that in phase one there was some language on the website that said, you know, this is just the Wolf game. There's no roadmap. It's all on the blockchain and public domain. They kind of wanted people to think that this was the entire game and that it had no real obligation to continue. But there was always the sort of like, you know, wink, wink. Implication that there's gonna have to be more after, and that there's planned to be more. So yeah, to go back to your question, yeah, there was an understood cap to the wool, which made people think that it's going to be valuable. Even that's very different than some other you know, game tokens that come out with no supply cap, that, you know, will eventually just go down in price because there's so much supply. So the quant bike guy, he and it's a shame that I don't really see him too much in the Discord anymore. He was pretty active early on. I think he's still around. He pops in every now and then. So he goes and he takes the initiative to start the liquidity pool, which creates wool on, you know, so you can buy it on the decentralized exchanges like DEX tools. And when it first came out, when it first was created, it started at 6 cents. And I think it pretty much immediately doubled to around 12 cents. And it was around this time that we had the first real Wolf game pump. Everything started flying up in prices because people started to realize, like, okay, well, if this thing is even at the initial 6 cents of wool, if I'm generating 10,000 wool per day, I mean, they do a quick calculation and they realize, you know, there's a lot of actual worth in what's happening.
It's funny. I remember doing this is when I got in. I remember doing that calculation. I like, now that when you talk about it, I'm like, oh, I remember doing that calculation before.
Oh yeah. The calculator app was open. I had probably like 20 calculator app instances open. I don't know. I'd always open a new one, and with various calculations, like it's like, am I about to be rich? Is this what's happening? Is this it?
Right.
And everybody, and because of that sentiment and that, you know, that euphoria kind of feel that everybody was having, it started pumping big, and that's when we started getting big names involved. That was about the time that Gary Vee started buying. That was when, you know, Banks and even Marshmallow. Who else? Post Malone.
Steve Aoki, maybe.
Yep, Steve Aoki. That's when they all got in, and things started going up. I think probably we got to 1 Ethereum floor pretty quickly at that time.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and the sentiment, again, we got so many people at the time like joining the Discord saying like, this is not going to last forever. This is going to last. They did the calculation. They saw that the faucet stake, the staking faucet, was only going to last for probably about 2 or 3 weeks. And so people were like, who's going to be left holding the bag? Like, you guys are this is clearly a Ponzi, a scam,
right.
You know, like all that kind of stuff. But meanwhile, everybody was pretty happy with the way things were, making a lot of potential money. And that's when some of the real fun risk came into play, because of the fact that like when the Gen 1 mint was still happening, you know, and so the choice was to use 20,000 of your wool to mint, and that was about, you know, $4,000 USD in for the cost, because I think it got up to around like 20 cents for wool at the time. So you could risk essentially $4,000. It could be stolen, so that could go kaput, or you could get a wolf, which was
10% chance.
I think like a minimum. Yeah, 10% chance, and it was probably I think I want to say like 5 Ethereum at minimum at that time.
Yeah.
So it was a 10% chance to basically 5x your investment, or a 10% chance to lose it all. So I had a chance to mint once during Gen 1, and it was definitely one of the most adrenaline inducing moments that I've had in NFTs for sure. I got lucky. Well, I didn't get a wolf, but I got lucky in that I didn't lose at all. I got a sheep. And so and you know, this was like, you know, pure wolf game, like at its peak. People were loving it. People were posting pictures of the results of their mints. We got a couple people showing that their mint was going to be a wolf, but it got stolen. Real unfortunate stuff. And, you know, people were reacting with emojis like crying faces for when people lost their stuff. There was a bit of a camaraderie kind of moment happening in the Discord. So it was an all-time high, I think.
I remember people like wolves posting like, woke up to 2 new sheep this morning in my wallet, and stuff like that, and I was like, oh my god, this is just crazy. Like, this is wild. I managed to mint 2 sheep myself at that time. It was it was adrenaline pumping. You were like, oh, what's gonna happen?
Watching the little GIF on the screen as it was formulating your transaction. You're just like, what is it gonna show? Is it gonna show that I'm about to get screwed, or
it's like the blackjack dealer shuffling. You know, they're shuffling your cards, and then they toss it to you, and it's that moment where you flip it over. And that's, I think, in the end, that's part of the magic potion, right? That's part of the formula. That is definitely part of it. There's a lot of nuances that have sort of grown out of this project that give us these little sort of, you know, what are they called? Endorphin, you know, hits or whatever you want to call them, you know?
Dopamine rush.
Yeah, that's the lightning in the bottle, and that's the magic sort of potion. I think this project is really pioneering, you know, aside from the, you know, technological feats that it's doing. But,
absolutely. So then you know, nothing lasts forever, unfortunately, and it was shortly after that we started to get our first of the few issues that we've had. So it was discovered by a couple folks on Twitter that there were some issues with the smart contract that had to do with the minting in particular. There was a way, and I have a general understanding. I might get some of the actual facts here not correct, but there was a way that people could essentially do a mint, and in the blockchain transaction, prior to it completing, they would be able to see whether or not it was going to turn into a wolf or a sheep. And then if it wasn't the outcome that they liked, they could cancel it before the actual transaction completed and before they were charged. So what people did was they set up a ton of like bots and scripts to basically run many transactions at once, and revert all the bad ones, all the sheeps, and keep the wolves. And it didn't. From what I understand, and you can look at it, you can see the amount of wolves there are versus sheeps. They didn't, Shepard and the team, they didn't really say like how much it was exploited, but in a perfect world there would be 10% wolves compared to the sheep count. I think if you look, it's probably a little bit closer to 15% wolves to sheep. So there were definitely some extra wolves that were minted using that exploit.
Yeah, at a turn, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Not enough to totally disrupt the economy, I would say, but luckily they caught that in time, or they heard from the people on Twitter or wherever they were reached out that of the issue. So what they had to do was they had to pause the minting, which at the time we're like, oh, okay, well they're gonna figure it out, and then they're probably gonna unpause it pretty soon. I'm sure they're just gonna fix it, no problem. Now we know in retrospect that pause actually turned out to be the end of phase one. Yeah. At least in terms of minting. So I think what happened next was there was like maybe a day or two at the most of the mint being paused, but people were still staking and were able to shear the sheep and the wolves to get wool, but all they could do with it at that time was sell it basically, or just hoard it.
And so just to pause for a second, so in the community, like in the Discord, so to speak, I guess we could just say in the Discord, but people were relatively okay with this exploit to start. They were like, oh, the team will fix it, everything's okay, or what was the sentiment at that point?
So they were okay, and the reason why they were okay generally was that it effectively stopped the supply, while staking and yielding was still a thing, but the supply became locked. So that actually drove up the prices pretty decently, because now the only way to get more animals was to buy them off the secondary on OpenSea. So I think we saw a price increase at the time. It wasn't dramatic yet, but it was about to get dramatic, because after a couple days of that, I think that's when we actually saw the release of the land section on the website, where Shepard basically introduced the new NFTs that were about to enter the economy, which was land and farmers. And right after the release, like literally like 20 minutes after the release, another exploit was discovered, which had to do with staking and unstaking. And they paused the staking at that time. So that exploit was something called a reentrancy bug, that has to do with how the smart contract functions are called. Don't really know entirely. I just know the name of it. I just know the basic premise of it. And the outcome was that people could exploit this in such a way that when they go to unstake their animals, they could potentially vastly increase the amount of wool that they get in the process, like to the factors of like millions or even billions of wool. So that one did not get exploited. No bueno, indeed. If it did happen, it would have just destroyed the economy entirely. It would have maxed out the amounts of wool that could be minted, basically, and the game would be over, because whoever got all that wool would probably just immediately sell it on the market and just crash just drain the entire liquidity pool. But luckily that didn't happen. They caught it in time. But the way that they solved it was they paused the staking. So this is where we got into some real controversy. Because
pandemonium.
A lot of people, this was pandemonium. It's weird though, because it was two things. It's what caused the prices to pump the highest that they've ever seen. Because with everything locked up, there was no way to unstake, and there was no way for people to sell. So we started seeing the listing numbers go down to, there was, I think at the lowest, there was probably like 15 sheep at one point listed, and it went up to the prices were absurd. 7 Ethereum, 8.5 Ethereum for sheep.
I'm still feeling away because I got one of my friends into the game right at that point, and he bought a sheep, which he's still holding, and he's staked for 5 ETH. So he's a long-term holder at this point.
Gotta be. Otherwise,
but he's cool with it.
He's realizing some big losses.
No, he's cool with it. He played risky game and won, so he's feeling it.
Nice.
He's feeling the magic.
Good for him. Winning a risky game with one. That's good.
Right.
But like the staking. Yeah, and this is when people really felt like they were almost their NFTs were being held hostage. And there were people that are like, I'm gonna sue Shepard.
Yeah.
Like, this is illegal.
Yeah, the rug talk.
I don't know what the legal implications are. Yeah, I don't know what they could have done, but they were pissed.
Yeah.
And there are some people in the community still that said that they were really pissed. I mean, they're okay with it now.
Right.
But it was bad. It was bad. It was good and bad, because the prices were crazy, but and then it got worse and worse because it went on for days. It went for I think 6 days, and we didn't know for a few days what was going to happen.
Yeah, here is where like you really feel like the team was at its lowest point, where they're just like, what do we do? And this is, I think, the pivotal moment where the game sort of shifted right here within team, I think. So here I am. Yeah,
very likely. I do wonder what was going on in the head of Shepard and whoever else is on the team. It must have been brutal, but to give them some real credit, they did eventually solve this issue, and then they introduced the next phase of the game, which was the risky game, as a way to essentially distribute the wool that was meant to be given out during phase 1. Earlier I said that people were speculating or calculating that phase 1 would only be able to last about 3 weeks to distribute all the 2.4 billion wool, but it only lasted a few days. So Shepard wanted a way to distribute what was intended to be given out, and the way that he figured that out how to do that was through this risky game mechanic.
At this point, nobody really understood what was going to happen after risky game, right? It was just this whole promise of a full virtual economy. It wasn't like anybody really knew specifics at that point.
True, and I guess I glossed over a bit about the land section of the site was released at one point before that. So farmers and land were released in a way. There was a Dutch auction for land that occurred where it started off at 0.69, I think, Ethereum, and went down to, I think, 0.1. and that minted out fine. And then there was farmers that were bought. Oh, I guess I should talk about the land. There was a bit of I suppose controversy or people that were not super pleased about the land Dutch auction. Do you remember why?
I think it was it because they were taking ETH instead of wool for it? What was that?
That's exactly it.
And you know something that's funny is there's another sort of play to earn game that just had the same thing happen to them. It's really interesting. And so it must be something about in the beginning of the game using ETH for there has to be something because they did it too, and I just wonder. I don't.
It's hard to say what the goal. I mean, you have to imagine that it's raising funds in a way.
Yes.
Because otherwise they would have just used the game token wool in our case. So people weren't super pleased about that. They cried cash grab, that kind of thing.
I didn't see anything wrong with it.
I don't either, but like I'm a developer myself, and I can understand them trying to make money off their product. I mean, I get it, and there's also people that were mad when they looked at the Shepherd's wallet or whatever and saw that they transferred Ethereum that they earned from the early mints, transferred it to Coinbase. There's a lot of people that were mad about that too. But I don't understand. To me, I don't really understand it as much. Like, what are they expecting really? That money is going to go back to them, or
you know what I think? Honestly, if you want my little kernel, is I think that we are so used to the Web 2 model of sort of you have these companies that are developing these products and they practically give them to us for free. Like, you look at Meta, for example, or what used to be Facebook. They give you this free platform, and then they give you these updates, and they give you all these things for free. Whereas I feel like people still have that little sort of thought process in their mind that, oh, this should be free because it's on the internet, and I'm here, and I'm spending my time here. You know what I mean? So I just feel like people still have a little bit of that thought pattern in their mind. And they expect, they weren't aware of Facebook's, corporate raises when they went out to raise money to build these products. The same way they're not privy to, it takes money to make money kind of thing. They're just kind of used to this free stuff all the time.
Yeah,
so that's my sort of theory on it.
Yeah, and maybe they're expecting it, the game or the product is a service for them rather than a product that they're developing.
Exactly.
When in my mind it is a product, but yeah, we can get philosophical about that.
Right. Exactly.
But the truth is, like, I think that money was meant to be used to essentially fund the next phase of the game, the larger phase of the game that includes land and farmers.
Absolutely.
And then farmers minted a bit the farmers used wool. So it was 50-50 between the land using Ethereum and the farmers using wool for the mint. But the farmers didn't mint out at the time. I think probably 5,000 or so farmers got minted at first, and slowly were minted over time with wool. And the land section of the site described what was probably going to be the future of the game, but we still haven't gotten there. That's going to be, I guess, what they're calling Wolf Game version 2.
And then they gave everybody land, right? They gave the...
Oh yeah, forgot about that. But that was a big thing. Generation 0 sheep and wolves qualified for the land claim, which, I mean, hey, that's pretty generous considering what land is at, and with my 5 sheep at the time, like, it was basically Shepherd giving me a couple of Ethereum for free, quote unquote free. But yeah, that's an interesting thing that they did. And let's see, where were we at? So I guess at that time, after all those events occurred, people weren't sure where they're going to go, and then they revealed the idea, which was Risky Game, and that one was basically Sheeps had to make a decision whether they're going to risk or no risk, essentially. When they're leaving the barn, the wolves had a proposition for them to play this game, is the lore, and they could either risk their wool and have a 50% chance of getting a larger wool pouch versus getting a smaller pouch that just included how much wool the sheep had prior to the pause, and including the pause time. So it ended up being around 37K wool in the wool pouch, or a bit more if they were staked for longer. And the larger pouches ended up being 230K wool, but that was calculated by essentially, it took the amount of wool that was remaining to be distributed from phase one, which was about 1.9 billion wool, and it was a pool of that, and the winners of that pool had all that split to them, and I think the losers, or whatever the leftover was given to all the alpha wolves, or all the wolves in general.
Yeah, I remember
and
that being
that amounted to a lot of wool.
It
was interesting, and it was mixed reception too, as
Definitely.
well, for the wool pouches, because people were just like, okay, but give me my wool. I don't want the wool pouches. I want all the wool that I deserve, and my sheeps were accumulating over the time, and the implication is they want their wool to just sell it. They wanted to grab their wool and probably just sell it. And I think the shepherd knew that, and that's why he came up with the wool pouch idea.
Yeah,
of course.
Which would not allow them to do all that.
And the shepherd kind of put his sort of, his bag on the line, so to speak, and, put a drip on his as well. So he was like, hey, if you guys are doing it, or, I'm doing it. So that kind of, for me personally, because I was kind of on the fence about it, I was like, that's kind of weird, But at the same time, when they did it, when they were like, well, we're going to lock up our 6 million or whatever, I was like, oh, okay, I can get behind that. You have conviction,
Yep.
And it was around this time that the herdsmen entered the scene as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, true. Yeah, it was probably in the time leading up before they were going to release the risky game. But yeah, they basically announced that they were going to bring on this new guy. They made a character for him, the herdsman, although he's actually doxed as a guy named Bernard Mueller. Which is nice, actually, that he's doxed, because it's so important that he is, in particular, because we know his qualifications as a security expert, basically, on smart contracts and that kind of stuff. He's a professional auditor, and so they brought him on.
Cardano guy.
Yeah. Maybe that's where some of that land mint money is going towards.
Exactly. Yeah, those guys aren't cheap.
But they basically announced that from now on, any future smart contracts that they're going to release for the game are going to be audited by this guy, the herdsman, and also announced a 24-hour bug bounty for the community, where they would release all the code publicly for the masses to look at, in case they miss something.
Which is awesome.
Since then, I think they've actually found. I think the public has found some of the bug bounties. They don't actually publicly release that information. People have noted that there have been some funds around that time that go from the shepherd's wallet to some other folks during the bug bounties.
That'd be an interesting stat. I don't know. I'm always interested in that kind of shit. Like, how much have they paid?
Yeah.
I
don't know the exact amount myself, but it's whatever they gave them, it's worth it for us, because those are things that could cause some real issues for us when they release the smart contract and it's there. Another small thing that they did, or actually kind of a major thing, but they never really publicly released this, is that all of their smart contracts that they release now are basically upgradable. Which means that if and when they have issues with the code, they don't have to do the migration of assets to the new smart contract. It can kind of happen seamlessly. And actually, that's something that occurred around this time as well, right before Risky Game. I guess I skipped over these events. Sorry about that. But the what happened after the staking exploit is that the migration of our old assets had to occur to a new smart contract that didn't have the staking bug. Yeah,
I forgot about that.
It was a big deal. Yeah, that was a big event that we almost skipped.
Little PTSD
because the migration. yeah. I mean, there's so many things have happened.
The interesting thing about that was that you remember it kind of created two marketplaces on OpenSea, right? There was the migrated sheep and then the unmigrated sheep, which is fascinating to watch. Just how people
and it's become more of a factor nowadays. Interestingly enough.
Right.
Because what happened though at the time was once the migration occurred and everybody, basically reminted their assets, their identical assets onto the new Wolf Game migrated collection. It went from basically 99% of everybody staked and a large percentage of them staked and pissed to 100% of everybody unstaked and ready to potentially sell. And we saw a big dump.
Yeah,
we went from the all-time high to the second all-time low, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I picked up another sheet there for sure.
Yeah,
good call. Because what did we get down to? I think I think it's like immediately people were listing at 1, up from like 6 or 7. The next listings on the migrated were 1. Yeah. And then it just tumbled because it was still some time in between that and Risky Game. And Wool was going down too.
Yeah, those are dark times.
They were able to do the auction at that time though, to kind of keep the community bonded and kind of really, I think that cemented a lot of, that was the kind of cementing of the OG people that were in before that, I think, and really understood all of the aspects, it was exciting.
Do you remember when did the auction occur within those events? Was that before Risky Game or is that
yes? So
after?
I think it was announced just before. It was announced on the 1st of December. And then the Risky pouches were announced on the 4th of December. That they were actually pouches. We knew we were going to get the wool and that sort of stuff, but the 4th was when they were. So I think, and then just after that we had the auction. That way. So yeah, there really is planning. With the announcements and how they release everything, which makes me really excited for Farmers and Land reveal.
Yeah, it's funny though, like how everybody expects these announcements to be coming like all the time, like daily, and like I don't know very many other projects where the expectation is at that rate. So that's an interesting kind of double standard that kind of happens with Wolf Game. I think it's just everybody's just dying for more all the time.
I mean, you spend a lot of time in the general chat, and so you're constantly sort of ushering people and kind of welcoming people and guiding people, and during that time, I imagine it was pretty hectic.
Those were some of the darker days for sure. And there were some days where it's basically just like me and maybe some of the mods just holding it down and trying to reassure everybody, and giving them the information that they want.
People would just be demanding an announcement, and you'd have to be like, well, what do you want them to say? What do you want them to say?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, there's very much the can devs do something kind of mentality at the time, just always. I was just gonna say that the like really like for me it was I think everybody was still confident because we knew that Shepard had the track record of like innovating and always kind of leading us to the next step, and also like we had gotten beyond the idea that like this could be a rug pull. That's always the thing. It's like, oh, you guys are being strung along and it's very clearly going to be a rug pull. Like we would get people coming in and saying that all the time.
Of course.
And it's like, if that were the case, then they would have done that like long ago. Like they wouldn't have gone through the migration and all that stuff. So we were confident.
I think what really gave people, or at least what comforted a lot of people, was the fact that there are all these other games that were coming out that were sort of, what became known as copy pastas or copy and paste games, where they would clearly just be basically copying the code of Wolf Game. And sometimes on other chains, they would be trying to initiate their project and they would come to the same exact exploit. And so, and they weren't able to move past it. So it's not like they copy pasted and fixed it. They were in the same position we were. So I think that gave a lot of people sort of a sigh of relief as though this wasn't just, something that was, specific to our community, but it was a real problem. And if we could solve this, it would be something because we would be the first ones to do it. So it became a challenge,
It's a great point to bring up because that was something that was happening at the time when the game was essentially paused for us. We saw a lot of those guys pop up: Wizards and Dragons, Whale Game, Treasure Hunt Game. What else?
Game.
There were so many.
Sheep Game, which was pretty much like the most scandalous copy pasta I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, it was literally the same exact assets on a different chain, right? I think it was a different chain.
Yeah, AVAX. Yeah, or yeah.
There you go. And plenty of just straight up scam ones as well.
Right.
Yeah.
But it gave us something to laugh at, I guess. We all took it in good stride,
Yeah.
Because they just began
it's not that we wanted them to fail either, but like there's still kind of like in the back of our mind, it's like, well, it kind of makes us look better when they end up failing because like we've held on and like they can't get the same sort of success that we did because we have the Shepherd and his innovations that are allegedly better than the rest. That was at least kind of the sentiment. It did feel pretty okay to see those come and go, and I'm sure there was a lot of animosity towards Wolf Game in those communities because they felt like that they should have a chance to get the success that Wolf Game did and that they deserve that. Meanwhile, Wolf Game was relatively stable without a game for many days and weeks, and they're like, well, we have a game, why is our game doing worse than them and they don't even have a game?
Right.
So
well, they
I think they were upset.
They didn't have the community. They didn't have the, when you go through something like that, I feel like we all went through it. We all were like put really through the gamut of emotion to where we felt like almost, like a real community. It was,
Sure.
like and I think that's what really galvanized everyone together. And so, if you're here, I'm here, and we're all going to make it through this, and we're all going to watch this team. We're here, I guess, is when everyone dug in. Like, we're doing it, So
yeah, we're not leaving kind of mentality. Yes. And like, also, I think a lot of these other games, these people that were investing in the other games were really hoping to get, a piece of the action of the Wolf Game pump. And so I think many of them their eyes were just squarely set on profit and, potentially flipping. They didn't necessarily have the faith and the diamond hands that our community did. They were just ready to make their money, and I think that kind of led to some quick dumps on those games. Meanwhile, I do think that Wolf Game has inspired definitely a set of games that are coming out and will continue to come out, kind of as like they've created this sort of genre. And I definitely think that we're going to see some games very much succeed using this formula and whatever innovations that they have. And some games like Wizards and Dragons, I have to give them some credit. I never invested in them. I kind of wish that I had, just to show a bit of solidarity towards them, because there was a lot of crossover between investors in Wolfgame and them, and they're doing their own set of innovations, trying to regain some of their glory. So we'll see what happens with some of these games. Some of them might come back, and some of them will not.
So is that a little alpha? You think they're gonna rise from the ashes here? You think Wizards and Dragons is a good one to watch?
I don't know. I don't know. I watch them, and I like that they're trying to solve their issues. Whether or not they have the chops to solidify their economy in a way that Wolfgame has remains to be seen. But at least they're trying to solve their issues. I think they've migrated a bit towards Polygon, to have their gameplay exist on Polygon for lower gas fees. But anyway, a lot of those games popped up trying to capture the success, and while we were paused, and they were kind of taking advantage of that in a way too, because people were changing, people were selling Wolfgame and getting into these other ones, trying to chase these little pumps that were occurring.
Absolutely.
So they were they were there in the right place at the right time. But it's interesting because they did copy a lot of the mechanics, and some of them straight up copied the contracts and had the same issues.
Yeah, exactly.
But an interesting perspective, I think, also is that they basically Wizards and Dragons at least was able to complete basically the phase 1 of Wolfgame, and that introduced a lot of supply into their economy. They minted a ton of new wizards, essentially completed their Gen 1 and Gen 2 of the wizards, and it ended up not being super successful in terms of like a stable tokenomics kind of situation, and their token dumped and their floor stumped.
Interesting.
So it's kind of like a blessing in disguise potentially for the exploit.
Yeah, I know. I definitely have. I'm of that opinion myself, that the risky game and the pouches, over 4 years have kind of given it the longevity it needs, to get up and running, and keep people invested. And like, even if you look at the tweet timeline, it's all very well timed, and it was around this time that the Shepherd then announced the breeding, and kind of was hinting at a lot of the full game features around now. And I think that's when we started to see our price kind of turn up again. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
No, that's true.
We had a big pump when staking was announced to be returning. And in a future tweet, he said, essentially in some words, staking will return in the future. And I mean, it was the funny thing is, was not necessarily like new information for those who were paying attention, or those that knew what was going to happen in the future. But like, it was just confirmation, I think, was enough for a lot of people to ape back in, or to really start buying more, because they were thinking to themselves like, oh man, well, staking in phase 1 brought so much money in, and the floors pumping and the token pumping. So this is basically saying like, Wolfgame's going to come back in some way in the future, and so like getting in now while the floors are low is a good move. So that was a big pump at that point.
Yeah, I think what I'm sort of understanding, on a very sort of rudimentary level about these mechanics in this sort of sector of NFTs that's being created, is that if you're developing, the goal is to, by staking NFTs, you're taking them off the market, and you're ensuring that people are holding that. And so it's like, it's this perfect sort of storm of value, and you're incentivizing people to do that. And I think that's what really we're bearing witness to, is this this idea of, merging DeFi and merging traditional NFT, art. And then once you do that, then the possibilities are endless, because that will drive the market price up and make it sought after. And it's kind of like, kind of sends the snowball tumbling down the hill. And all you have to do at that point is execute and keep people satiated and control the supply of your token. And if you can prove on paper and through execution that you can control your token, and you can provide new value to keep those NFTs off the marketplace, and that to me seems like the recipe for success at this point.
It's just another example of Shepard wanting the game and the economy to be stable. And like we talked a little bit about the pouches and how they distribute their contents over 4 years, which, when they were first announced, that was wild to people. Like 4 years, that's way too long.
Especially in the NFT space.
Yeah, that was the sentiment, and there was also some confusion about how they worked, because they're different. They're not the usual token yield mechanism that people are used to. So there was a lot of people that actually thought that they had to wait 4 years before they could get their wool.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they didn't realize that you would get, basically wool accumulating over time.
Yeah. You can sell it every day if you want to.
Yeah. So the sentiment was not necessarily good when risky pouches, or when the risky game pouches, the wool pouches, were released. But that, looking at them now, that sentiment didn't quite age well, as the pouches themselves hold quite a lot of value on their own, let alone the value of the wool that is released over time. So that definitely stabilized the economy, because if people got what they asked for, which is basically, I want my wool and I want it as soon as I can get it, then they would have gotten it, and they would have just dumped it on the market. And our token, the wool token, went down quite a lot around that time. I think the low was 3 cents at some point in that time. But imagine how much worse it would have been if people got all the wool. I think it would have probably gone to zero. I imagine almost all the liquidity of the pool would have gotten removed at some point.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the relic auctions were announced somewhere around there, and did occur, and that got a pump of wool at some point. And the auctions themselves were pretty damn cool. One of the coolest moments that I've had in the NFT space is tuning in for that first auction experience with the auctioneer.
Yeah.
That was a trip, huh?
Yeah, we were talking about
wild.
doing the next one live on this, kind of just our reactions to it, and just having a bit of fun with it, because it was electric. I hadn't experienced anything like that ever before. I really enjoyed it.
It was like
And
going
it
to a
was fun
concert.
to rewatch it. There was I think there was a recording of the first one.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of bummed. I'm not sure that I've seen a released second auction recording. If you guys ever track that down, I'd love to find that, but I don't know what happened with that. But yeah, quite a good experience. And it was a way to raise, to burn a lot of wool, and to raise awareness, and to really have a unique event. And that was historic in its own respect, for sure. So that was cool to see. And of course, later on we had a second auction much later after that. Actually, not too much later. I think it was probably only 2 or 3 weeks after the first auction. Wasn't too much later. It kind of kicked in sooner than I think many people expected.
Yeah, for sure.
Around the early this year, right? I think it was like the first week of January, I want to say. Because not a lot else was going on around that time. I'm trying to think what other major events occurred.
We had the
after
news
risky pouches.
of merchandise coming. That was something that that tweet came out just before Christmas there, and that was interesting to see. I'm really excited about hearing what it is, and the fact that we get to burn wool. I like that. Oh well, I don't know if it's burning, but it's going to require the wool. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if some amount is burned, and maybe some other amount is probably going to go towards the merchandiser, the tailor, I think he called them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't wait to see more about that. We haven't really gotten a ton more information after that, or any information really, but I imagine it's in the works.
So one thing I do want to talk about just while we're here on the auction is I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about your recent sort of plunge into the gift space here, you know, and at least within the community. I'm sure you've been doing it for a little while, but some of the gifts that you're coming out with, man, it seems like I see a new one every day that's just like blowing my mind. Like,
Yeah.
So, you know, can you tell us a little bit about your sort of experience in the gift world? And are you, you know, do you have a graphic design background, or is this something that you just kind of picked up the, you know, the iPad or the mouse pad and started doing? Or talk to me about you and your
so
journey.
For sure. So I do have some experience. I mentioned I'm a game developer, and I've been working in the games industry for about 10, maybe 11 years. And so I've always been, making little side games, nothing fully released, a ton of unfinished games. And I've done a lot of kind of pixel art on the side in the process. I do programming, art, music, that kind of stuff, various digital media. So I do have some experience, but this is probably one of the larger kind of forays into GIF animations, and it's been real fun. It's been a blast. It kind of started. If you're watching this, you're probably looking at my wolf avatar that has the visor on it. So if you guys don't know, that this wolf is kind of a custom model that combines the visor from my sheep, kind of composited onto my wolf. But shortly after I made that, I wanted to like animate him in my Discord profile. So I just kind of did a quick animation of him pulling down the shades, and then, you know, that was somehow the start of this whole, you know,
Wow.
snowball event into the gifts that I'm making. I made I think I had a couple of requests for people like, hey, can you animate my profile picture? I said, sure. I did a few, just by and how I started it at first was I was just asking, you know, for tips or donations of wool. You know, I left it up to the basically the commissioner to decide how much they wanted to send me, if anything. There were a few that I did for free, and there were a few I did for some light wool tips. And it was just fun. It was a fun process. The pixel art of Wolfgame is not super complex, as you guys have seen. So it's a basis that's kind of easy to get started with. So I just kind of, you know, built off of the graphics that existed. And then, you know, with my later gifts, I kind of, you know, made them a little bit more advanced using some of the knowledge that I've picked up over the years. And just, you know, I'm a gamer, I'm an old school gamer, and so like this is kind of like Super Nintendo art, and that's the stuff that I grew up with. So I'm familiar with the kind of animations that occurred in those kind of old school games. So I kind of just recreate that style.
Definitely makes me want to play Nintendo every time I see those, actually. So my son got me one of those ones that you can just plug into the TV now. And honestly, no lie, after playing Wolfgame and seeing the art and then seeing your animation, I busted it out. And I just wanted to start playing it. Like, seriously, it's really amazing. Like, you're truly talented, man. I really, really enjoy it. And I think
thanks, appreciate that.
You know, you've done nothing but enrich this community, both with, you know, you're helping out of everyone understand the game, and your patience with people that come into the game and are frustrated with the game, and just your overall sharing of strategy, and the gifts are just a cherry on top. That is something that I hope you don't stop doing that. You know, I hope maybe this leads to something that could be, you know, a new facet of your being.
Well, I don't want to reveal too much, but there's going to be more. There's going to be more gifts. I'm working with several of the alpha pack leaders, and it could amount to something more. We'll see, but I'm
awesome.
having fun with it, and you'll see more. It's been a couple days since you've seen a terminatus relic, but that's just because the next one is in the works, and there'll be more after that. So, and about like becoming, I guess you could say, like a leader of the community. I'd never intended for this to occur, really. I just, I aped into Wolf Game, and it just, because of all the stuff that we've been talking about for the past hour or more, it's clearly, it draws you in, and
Absolutely.
there's always more that you want to have with the game, and I guess there wasn't enough, so I had to go and start creating some of it for myself. I had to make more content. I had to flesh out the information that was available with the guides, and make some gifts that people enjoy. So it's been a blast.
I know one that we particularly loved was the one for AJ with the round table.
Oh my god,
that was just
that was
I have it up here on the screen for everyone to see. Yeah, it's
epic.
Just epic.
My 6-year-old daughter was like, "That's amazing." I was like, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, that one took some time. I kind of went nuts with that one, and part of me, I mean, I love it, but I also kind of regret going so far, because now the bar is so high.
Right.
I have to make sure that all of them are going to be to that level or in that vicinity, in the ballpark. But yeah, that one I think that one probably took about 12 hours to do.
Wow.
So they're definitely not trivial to put together. Maybe someday I'll do like a stream or a time lapse on how I create some of these, which I think could be interesting for people to see what it takes, all the layers, all the frames involved. See that process could be kind of cool to show people too.
Definitely, I know I'd be interested in seeing that. Yeah.
There you go. You got your first 2 views right here.
Cool. There you go. Got an audience already.
So we're up to the auction now, and do you want to go up until Risky Game and then kind of break that into
Risky
part
Game
one?
happened. Yeah. See, let's see where we left off. So the relic auctions happened, and then Risky Game happened. A bit of a dump on wool occurred after the Risky pouches came out, somewhat as expected, and I would say not as much as people expected. I think a lot of people thought it was going to go really, really south, and it didn't. It did go south, but it recovered with the announcement of the auctions and all that occurred. And then we were basically just kind of waiting around for a long time. This was when we were basically like, the community was always like, when's the next announcement? What are they going to show off next? Like, what's going to happen with the game? When land reveal? When farmer reveal? Which we still haven't got, obviously. But
at this point, there was no interim game. People were speculating about it, right?
There was no interim game. So at the time, obviously Beanie was pretty involved in, at least in terms of providing alpha. Because he apparently had, I guess, the ear of Shepard. I don't, it's a controversial thing. We don't know how involved he is, but he at least seemed to be in communication with the Shepard. So he would drop these bits of alpha, which we loved to hear, because information was scarce from Shepard. It was once a day, sometimes every 2 days. So we were information starved, and getting information that had to do with the future of the game, we love to hear it, even if this, and it was kind of a double-edged sword, because people really wanted to hear information from Beanie, but we weren't sure what was speculation from him or what was real alpha. So there was a lot of debate, a lot of arguments that emerged because of the speculations.
Decoding.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I know Neil had him on Spaces a couple of times. You joined them.
Yeah.
That was
and then they got people.
He would he'd trip himself up a lot, I suppose. So it meant that a lot of people who were speculating kind of just got very frustrated.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there were some real controversial features that he would talk about. Stuff about the generation difference and death and lifespans that, produced a lot of friction for a time there. I feel like the sentiment in the community was getting a little bit more toxic. There was definitely some not so friendly rivalries and jabs going towards each other.
Yes.
People don't like when you question their investment decisions.
Yeah,
and
devalue
a
their
lot of people
asset.
were investing heavily. Exactly. Yeah. And so Gen 1 people were not pleased when Gen 0 proclaimed their superiority over them.
Right. And I think that was more. I think that was. It's hard when you have a bunch of people just waiting around, and you allow the kids to play and the people to talk, and rumors get started and they snowball, and then obviously Beanie wasn't helping. Sometimes he would talk out of both sides of his mouth or be cryptic, and it was definitely an interesting moment to be around for sure.
Yeah,
a lot of speculation.
It's tough because I think Beanie may have thought that his ideas maybe have had more weight than I don't know, like perhaps he was thinking that a lot of his designs were going to be a thing just because he was saying them. I don't know. I don't want to dive too deep into that particular thing, but like it was definitely a historical part of the process where at this time, like, there was not a lot of information and we wanted it, and Beanie was the source.
Right.
Certainly at the time.
It to us.
And one of those was that he basically revealed that there was ideas for an interim game, although at the time he said it was some sort of competitive breeding game was his first mention of it. Which in retrospect that's interesting to think about, because that's not how it turned out to be.
Very much different to that.
Yeah, nothing to do with breeding. So that just shows you, like, that at the time, stuff that we thought was real alpha wasn't. It was just speculation, or who knows? Maybe that was at the time the plan, but since it was never announced, it's certainly subject to change. And what the interim game that we got is very different than what was speculated was going to be.
I wonder.
So I think that produced a bit of a pump.
I wonder if breeding is something that will be offered while this game is on as a draw away. If it was, there can be truth extrapolated from Beanie's little things as well. But who knows with him as well. So
Interesting thought for sure. Yeah, there's been a lot of speculation about what these special events are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think. And do you have any theories without going off the deep end, Terminatus, as far as what you think the interim to the interim, I guess you would say, or these special games are going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of been wondering what was going to happen with these like Olympics or Wool-Olympics style gifts that we saw at one point.
So you're on Neil's team here.
That's what he's thinking. Yeah, I mean,
that's what he's thinking for sure.
I have to wonder what it's going to be like, because the fact that the interim game didn't immediately include this like Olympics, because when these gifts came out, like, the common belief was this is interim game. The interim game is going to be this Olympics. Like, he's clearly showing us what the different games are going to be, that there's going to be different risks involved. There's going to be you swinging across a pit kind of thing, or there's going to be a maze. But the fact that we didn't get that made people believe that maybe these gifts were just kind of metaphorical. He's saying, I'm looking at it now. It says, "May your risk appetite and strategic senses guide you in your quest for wool. Compete on the path you believe to be most wise." So I guess a takeaway could be that this is just a metaphor. You're not actually playing these games, but it's just showing you the kind of risks that you're going to be confronted with in the future game. But like I was saying, another speculation is maybe this is a special event that's going to occur during Alpha game. Kind of going back on that. I think that would be fun. I mean, we clearly already have some of the graphics involved in something like that, and there's a basis there for something fun and team based. So we'll see. Otherwise, I think a more boring example. Looking in the code, there's a mention of like a sort of checkpointing system where like maybe what a special event could be. Like I said, this is a lot more boring, but like maybe there's like a midway point in the game, and Shepard just kind of is able to take a snapshot of the current standings and give out rewards as a sort of checkpoint. Like, okay, this is the midpoint leaders get this amount of wool just by being in the current positions. I think that's a very simple thing that he could do easily.
Interesting.
Man, I was reading on Twitter what Meta Hulk was saying. I believe you guys are. I want to say. I think you guys are teammates, right? You are House Corey, right?
Yeah, I'm on Corey's team primarily, and I am a bit on AJV's team as well.
Yeah, so his whole theory, or what he sort of discovered, was that he kind of made the case for zero sum in the end, so that like basically it didn't no one's really going to win in the end. No team is really going to win. It doesn't matter what team you stick with, it's all going to kind of come together to a kind of an even point with everyone. Obviously Alpha is aside. Alpha 8 says, but also, and then Snowflake, who is this other individual that's also in the game, kind of laid out his plan for really seeing no discrepancy in the teams, or at least a negligible amount of reward. So in the end, it's not necessarily the reward isn't necessarily going to be the wool. But as I've always said, and I say this in every episode, I think loyalty is the aim here. And I think that loyalty will, in the end, be rewarded. And those who were the most loyal are going to be rewarded in this game. And so maybe the interim game is going to be something that entices you to move and sort of change your loyalty. And maybe the outcome won't be in the favor of those who were not loyal. But that's
so
just,
you think
again,
that's a trap?
Yeah, it's going to be tempting. It's going to be very tempting, but there'll also be some risk involved, and I think the risk will be losing. And I think if you stay with the team you're with, you'll win regardless. But again,
I think that's
I
a very
spreading it out.
Very good point when it comes to the lore. And I know it's going back to Beanie, but he did reference that the lore came from the fables, Aesop's fables. And I done a lot of deep diving into that, and just kind of, I know that a lot of smart people take a lot of guidance from fables, and the story of the wolf with the wolf and his reflection, where he drops his food into the river to try and double the amount of food he has and ends up with none. So that could be very relevant when we look at this kind of situation where people are going to switch to maybe increase their yield, but in the end that might not pay off. It lives up to that.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. The one thing that I would not be pleased with is if the Shepherd kind of twists the rules or turns them on their head in such a way that would like kind of screw over the people that had made a decision with the rules in mind, the rules as they were presented. If for some reason he decides, like as an example, like at the end of the game, what if they just switched the leaderboard where it's like, you know, the last place is actually first place, you know, like something like that, like something that could drastically change the rules like that. I think wouldn't be fair, but something that is more playful, and or something that has to do with special events that are outside of the rules that have been already presented. I think those will be the best. But I mean, who knows? Maybe we are rewarded for not switching. I could see there being an additional war at the end. I wouldn't put it past Shepard to do some kind of twists for sure, and I think many people are hoping for twists in some respects. But yeah, it's I guess the sky's the limit as to what the special events could be.
I'm slowly anticipating that announcement for sure. You know, that's sort of the next thing that people are going to be asking about in general, I'm sure. When announcements for Sheep Olympics, maybe we'll get that hashtag going. Sheep Olympics.
I'm trying to remember if we've missed any other major events.
I think that was a really good synopsis up until Alpha Game, and you know that this is the kind of period we're in now. You know, it's been I know a lot has happened within Alpha Game, but yeah, I think that gives a nice idea for everybody, so they know, you know, where it's coming from, where the community has bonded over different events, and it also gives a snippet into what could happen in the future. You know, give that idea of where we've came from and where we're going.
Yeah, and with the version 2 incoming, who knows when, but there's a lot to look forward to. I know that there is some sentiment right now that Alpha Game for some players may not be totally engaging, but I think that Alpha Game is actually accomplishing exactly what Shepard set out to do, which is to give us something to, you know, watch and be engaged with from a community standpoint, and basically buys them time to flesh out this full game that I think is going to be returned to all the stuff that we know and love about Wolf Game. Certainly a lot more risk involved, and you know, the full-fledged system. So I think that patience is definitely going to be rewarded, and you know, it's been mentioned a lot of times, especially during some of the quieter times of the project, that like we're actually playing the game in a way, even when the game is not active. There's the whole game theory thing is like, you know, do you think that it's going to be worth it to hold the assets, or should you just exit? Like, that's kind of like the theory that is occurring. And if you have the confidence, if you have the patience to stay and to hold it out, then, you know, maybe that's how you win. Maybe that's how you win the meta game of Wolf Game. So
absolutely.
I think we just got to wait it out and enjoy the quiet moments while they last, because I don't think it's gonna be quiet forever. I think we're gonna have a lot of chaotic and fun moments in the future.
Yeah. I mean, speaking about quiet, it seems as though Woolish 126 isn't going to give us that in-stream move today. I guess he's got this poker face on. So I guess we're gonna stand by. Hopefully in the next couple hours or so, we'll get a move from those guys. But following them, we've got Gary's teams on deck, and then just some guy rounded out by a much anticipated move by Panther. I'm super interested to see how Panther's going to react, because he sort of is getting the brunt here, and I don't know if it was maybe something he said in the spaces the other day. Maybe one of these gifts pissed somebody off. I don't know, but it seems as though he's got the target on him right now, or them, I should say. So, yeah, wow, crazy. Thanks, Terminatus. I really appreciate you coming on today. That was I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better recap personally. I thought that was pretty. It's definitely way more in depth than I would have been able to go into, you know. But I feel as though this is going to be a very useful tool for people if they want to learn about what happened before and up to now. So I really appreciate you, and hopefully we can have you on again. And I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah. It was fun, and yeah, there's just it was a deeper dive than even I was anticipating. But you know, a lot of individual events have occurred. You know, kind of rapid fire. There are times where there's quiet moments, and then there are times where there's drama and politics, and Alpha Game is gonna continue to have those moments. So yeah, I'd be happy to come on again in the future as well.
Yeah, man, I would love to have it. I think you're truly an amazing member of the community, and I don't think it would be quite the same without you, sir. So keep on keeping on, please.
Will do.
Thanks. I can't echo that enough. It's been a pleasure having this much time to talk to you. I don't think we really had time to chat before. I know I'm not as active on the text chat as I am on the voice, but I guess on that note we'll wind it up, and if everybody can give us a like and subscribe, and we'll hopefully have Terminatus back soon. But thanks.
Thanks, everyone. You guys have a great day. Peace.
Bye, guys.